Good afternoon, and welcome to our virtual author reading and discussion with award-winning writer Elizabeth Glenn Copeland and special guest, actor, trans activist, and musician Glenn Copeland. My name is Jennifer Murley, and I'm the CEO of the Grey Highlands Public Library. I'm really excited to be hosting what I believe is the first event in Grey Highlands celebrating Trans Day of Visibility. Today is an opportunity to learn and reflect on our own bias, advance awareness of the radical transphobia taking place across Canada, and to let our trans communities know that we see them and support them and celebrate them. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth, who will be discussing her novella Jazz, Nature's Improvisation. Jazz is available at the library and is a coming-of-age story of transgendered teen. The novella was the winner of the 2014 Ken Klonsky Novella Prize and was shortlisted for the 2015 Relit Award. As described by Catherine Hudson of the Telegraph Journal, filled with facts, substance, and artful description, Jazz opens up a heartbreaking world of a young transgender teen bravely coming out to his family, only to be kicked out of the house and into a dangerous world full of unknowns. Before I give too much away, I'll hand the spotlight over to our guests. Thank you for leading this discussion today.
Yay. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much to the Grey Highlands Public Library. I also want to thank the Writers Union of Canada for providing funding for this event. It's very important. I also want to just take a quick moment to do a shout out to Cass. Hey, Cass.
Hey, Cass. Hey.
Cass, we were part of Cass's life for a number of years when we were out on the river in Miramichi. We ran a theater school and Cass was just a central part of that. And we feel so glad to have you still as part of our lives. And it's such a joy to see your beautiful face now at Mount Allison, right? Yeah. So good to see you, my friend. Okay, so we're really pleased to be here for National Trans Visibility Day. I want to just take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about, well, Glenn and I guess, as a couple here together. I'm going to show you a picture. This is a picture that was taken in 2002. This was at a concert that we did together. I don't know, can you see that there? There it is. See how young and cute we were? We're still cute, but not quite so young. Yeah, so I met Glenn in 1992. We met through a circle of friends, musicians, spiritual community, and our friendship continued on until 2007, when we met at a mutual friend's wedding and ended up realizing that we were meant to be together as a couple. So we've been together as a couple since 2007. And my relationship with Glenn is probably one of the biggest gifts that the universe could have ever given me in my life. So bless you, sweetheart. So many of you know about Glenn. Glenn is an internationally renowned musical artist. And some good news, Glenn is going to be receiving an honorary doctorate from U of T this coming June for not only the musical gifts that he has given us all, a soundtrack for many of our lives, but also for his, and these were the words of the president, his resolute advocacy on behalf of Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ2+ people. So I'm going to turn it over to Glenn right now to say a few words about what this day means to him. Sweetheart, over to you.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. It's amazing to me to have a day like this, even though it's getting more difficult again, more dangerous again. When I came out and told my mother I was a boy when I was 2 years old, and I was born in 1944. So in 1946, I announced that I was a boy. You can imagine what my mother thought about that, which was just, somehow I didn't know speech yet. Probably I wasn't talking yet properly or something. Anyway, yeah. And then, I went off to study at McGill University to study classical voice, actually, classical music. And when I came out, and that was in 1971, in 1972, I sort of did come out as trans, because that didn't exist. That concept didn't exist yet, at least, of course it did, but I wasn't aware of it. So I just came out as, gay or something. And that, of course, upset everybody in the dormitory at the university. It was really quite stunning what went on. And, I won't get into all of that, but that was when I really realized that, in fact, as a teenager, it's like I had to go and dance with boys. As teenagers, you're expected to dance with boys. And I was like, not, I dance with boys. That's all very nice. And I was looking at the girls going, I can't dance with the girls, right? But I couldn't. So there you go. Anyway, so at this point in time now, we have an actual acknowledgement of this community. And I'm thrilled about it. And I just, I really want to encourage anyone who's there to know, especially in our small community, you are not alone. You are not alone. Okay, and that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thanks, honey.
Thank you, darling.
So we're going to move on to the part of the program right now that has to do with the book Jazz, Nature's Improvisation. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this book came to be, but also a little bit about a core character, I guess, in my life who brought to my attention the price that we pay as a society holding certain prejudices. So when I was in grade 8, I had a teacher named Mr. Cartmail. And Mr. Cartmail was one of those rare teachers, and I know all of us have one or two of them, that just knew how to take a classroom full of disparate, pubescent youth and shape us into a community. Not only a learning community, but a community of friends with each other. He was a profoundly beautiful human being. So I was very happy to be in Mr. Cartmail's class. And I remember before Christmas vacation, he sent us off to have a wonderful holiday. And I just couldn't wait to get back into his classroom. When I showed up in that first week of January, there was another teacher there. And it's like, well, where's Mr. Cartmail? So all of us, because we loved him, all 32 of us, spent time, skulking around the class, the hallways of the school to find out, like, where has Mr. Cartmail gone? Because nobody would tell us. And I remember standing and listening in at the door of the principal's office one day and learning that Mr. Cartmail had been fired because he was gay. Now, at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. So I took my little highly intellectual self home and looked it up and found out what it meant. And I cried and cried and cried because I thought, we have lost this beautiful teacher because someone is afraid of how he loves, because someone is afraid of his gender fluidity. So we pay a hard price, we pay a high price when we disenfranchise other human beings because of biases held by a society that puts far too much into what we call normal. and read Gabor Mate's new book, nothing is normal, right? We're all part of the spectrum of humanity. So I dedicated this book to Mr. Cartmail. So how did the story come to be? So many years ago, I was working in a learning community. I was teaching different people in an East Indian community in Western Toronto. And these folks were incredible. They were Hindu and they welcomed me into their homes, into their families. And I got to spend the better part of a year with these people. So it was from these people that I learned a little bit about East Indian Hindu culture. So, of course, the character of Jazz, who was named Jaswinder, is from that same community. The character of Jazz first appeared in a writing workshop in 2009, I believe. So I'd gone to a short story writing workshop and the teacher gave us a prompt, and all of a sudden there was this incredible young East Indian trans youth. So I started the short story. I went home and within a couple of weeks I finished it and I submitted it to a magazine and it was picked up, published, and I thought, well, that's great. And I forgot about it. But sometime during that year, the character of Jazz kept coming back. Any of you that know Glenn knows that he writes music. He calls it the universal broadcasting system. And many artists receive information in that same way, right? It just kind of comes through. So the character of Jazz kept, in my morning writing, kept coming and tapping me on the shoulder and say, I'm not done. I'm not done. You haven't finished my story. So I did. I finished the book and the rest is the history that Jennifer has told you about. Submitted it to this contest and it won. So Glenn and I right now are going to share some excerpts from the book. And I just wanted to note for any of you that might be chatting to me, I have old eyes and I cannot read chats. So if you send to me any wonderful things in the chat or you're sending Glenn wonderful things in the chat, we can't see it. So bless you, but just know that's why we're not responding. Okay, Glenn, so are you ready to begin?
Indeed.
Okie dokie. All right.
I have to read, folks, and I have to look at it while I read it because I don't have it memorized. And this is a big computer, so sitting on a desktop, so I can't put it down so that I can look towards you. So just so you know. So here we go. There is a shadow of a girl floating around me, gossamer, guileless. I pretend I do not see her. She embarrasses me. Though I have tried, I cannot unlearn or forget what her life in me has given and taken, mostly taken. There is a shadow of a boy walking within me, ferocious, fine, though his heart breaks and mends, breaks and mends, and breaks again, he will not be shackled. His spirit is lightning fire. At birth, I was labeled a girl. I was named Jaswinder. My chosen name is Jazz. Like the music, I am nature's improvisation.
I told my mother I was a boy when I was 4 years old. She was standing at the counter, grinding the spices for the evening meal. Curry, cumin, garam masala. She stopped, sighed, turned and smiled at me, her mouth tense. Don't be foolish, Jaswinder. Now run along and wash our hands before dinner. I told her again when I was 12. We were in her sewing room. Bolts of brilliantly hued fabric were stacked against one wall. Straight pins and needles stood gaily on a green satin pin cushion. Thimbles, scissors, pinking shears, all neatly in their place. A chest full of tiny drawers, each containing threads of different color, stood beside the picture window that overlooked our backyard. I could see the branches of the willow tree waving at me as they danced in the wind. Close the door, Jaswinder, she began slowly, her voice soft. Choosing her words carefully, wanting to say just the right thing. She was trying to convince me, you see, of the sacred wonder of it all, of womanhood. I didn't want to interrupt her at first, to take this moment away from her. After all, I was her only daughter. Clearly, she had put a lot of effort into this speech, considered deeply how much or how little to tell me about the changes my body was going through. But in the midst of her detailed explanation, I stopped her. Mother, I would rather die than grow up to become a woman. Her back stiffened. What foolishness is this? As if you have any choice in the matter. I told her again today, on my 17th birthday, at the party she had thrown for me. I told her in front of my whole family, the aunties and uncles, the cousins, my friend Jenny from high school, and my big brother, Sujith. I told her after they brought out the presents and sang happy birthday, just as my mother was about to cut the homemade carrot cake with cream cheese icing, my favorite. The smile falls from her face. She drops the knife on the floor. Nobody moves. My brother looks away, disgusted. I always knew you were a freak. Enough, Sujith. My father struggles to keep his emotions in check. Jaswinder, look how you have upset your mother. This is not something we joke about. It's not a joke, I say. Freeze frame. No one knows where to look. At my brother's twisted face, at my mother, her eyes wide in an attempt to stop the tears that threaten, or at my father, standing still and hard as granite. On some unspoken cue, my aunties begin to fuss around my mother. A gaggle of hens scratching and clucking, picking up the knife from the floor, cleaning the icing off the carpet, straightening up the already tidy table. Come with me, my Auntie Nazneen hisses in my ear. Now. She pulls me from the room, through the French doors and onto the deck. Go to your mother. Apologize at once. No. What did you say? No. We wait until everyone leaves, which doesn't take long. Amazing how fast you can clear a room with a simple announcement. I'm going to jump ahead. So Jaswinder spends some time with her family trying to convince them, and they're not having it. Jaswinder leaves the house. My first stop is Zeller's to buy scissors, then to a change room. The scissors are cheap and I am sawing rather than cutting off the long black hair that my mother loves. I should keep it, put it in an envelope, send it to her as a parting shot. Instead, I leave it on the floor for the next customer, a gift, to commemorate the last time I will ever enter a ladies' change room. A plan. I need a plan. I call my friend Jenny. We've been friends since middle school. I know she'll help me. She picks up the phone right away, sounding distant, irritated. Jazz, what the hell was that? What do you mean? You know about me. Did you think I could live a lie all my life? No, not your whole life, but at least until you got through university and had a job. All through high school, Jenny and I kind of had a thing for each other, though she would never let me touch her. Now I wonder if maybe the attraction was one-sided, mine alone. Maybe I was just her token weirdo friend. So Jazz leaves Zellers and heads to the subway to head to downtown Toronto. So now we're going to hear the voice of Jazz's mom, Shamim. When my daughter Jazwinder told me she was a boy, I immediately called up my sister-in-law Nazneen to ask her advice. She was vacationing in Tuscany with her white CEO husband, and I didn't like to bother her. But there was no one else I could talk to. I pictured her sitting on a terrace high up in the hills, sipping a cool drink and dressed in something light and colorful. Shamim, she said, you must not make too much of this. I have read about these things. It is just a phase. She will grow out of it. Are you sure? Oh, yes, but do not, under any circumstances, tell my brother. So Auntie Nazneen goes on to become an ally for Jazz as this story unfolds. So we hear from Jazz's father and Jazz's brother, Sujit. So essentially, Jazz ends up going to downtown Toronto, hoping to connect with a young man that had offered him help. But he arrives at the coffee shop to find that the young man who he thought would help him, perhaps help him find housing, help him find a job, is no longer working at this place. So he leaves the coffee shop. I have jumped off the diving board of my destiny into the deep end. I'm not a good swimmer, and somebody better throw me a lifeline quick. I'm running low on friends, so in my current situation, I'll take what I can find, even if it's in an alleyway with a homeless guy. Jean-Paul is an Indian who currently calls the lane behind the coffee shop his home. 2 large plastic garbage bags hold all his worldly possessions. He looks up, checks me over, and then invites me to sit down. I offer him the rest of my coffee. He takes it, smacks his lips. I reach into my pocket, offer him dessert. A stick of Trident. Huh, I have clearly made his day. After an hour of conversation about this and that, he says, go home. The streets are no place for one such as you at night. He is 50, but looks 70. His nose is covered in broken veins. Lines of sorrow are carved around his eyes. One of his front teeth is missing. I have nothing to lose, so I tell him my story. Then wait for the familiar look of disgust to cross his face. Instead, a twinkling comes into his eyes. Back in the day, before the white people came to North America, people like you were honored in our communities. Why? I said. Because you know the ways of both men and women. Really? I said. We have a name for you. Two-spirited. Two-spirited, I said. I like that. So Jean-Paul takes him up, gets him a bed and a mission for the night, teaches him about sacred tobacco, and says, another thing you should know. We are called Indians because Columbus thought he had landed in India when he came to the shores of North America. I had not known this. So the truth is, you are Indian and I am not. I am from the Cree Nation, from Manitoba. The Great Spirit speaks to me when the moon is full. A police car drives by, slows to look, then drives on. 3 days from home and I am learning things. First, the good people at Second Cup don't like homeless Indians sitting on the stairs outside their establishment. The tall, thin young man with the ponytail doesn't make eye contact when he shoos us away. Second, the human body gets smelly fast. Man, do I need a shower. Third, restaurant owners don't let smelly people use their bathrooms. With nothing to do except hang out with Jean-Paul, there's lots of time to sit and think. Human nature is funny. Easy to make things black and white. Judge people as all good or all bad. I guess everyone is someone's freak. If I'd seen Jean-Paul on a shopping trip downtown with my mother, I would have turned away, repulsed by his greasy hair, the odor of tobacco and urine that clung to his clothes, the stink of sorrow. I would have never talked to him, felt his kindness, seen his nobility. In just a few days, Jean-Paul has become a father figure of sorts. It is not your destiny to be here with me, he says one day. You do not belong here. I know someone who can help you. She's an ex-nun, Sister Mary Frances. Don't turn your nose up. She's good people. As a parting gift, we share the last of my trident. He gives me directions. Go down to Queen Street, take the streetcar west. Go to the community center beside the church, somewhere around Logan. You've gone too far if you go across the river and under the sign that says you can't step into the same river twice. Is that true? I asked Jean-Paul. I don't know, he says. Ask Heraclitus. Who is Heraclitus, I say. Jean-Paul looks at me. An amazing Greek guy. You should look him up. I walk south, chewing my gum, moving towards my destiny, a little wiser, and with minty breath. So I want to introduce you to two more characters before we end. So one is the character of Sister Mary Frances, who ends up being an ally for jazz, who came up during the times of the AIDS crisis when so many people in that part of Toronto were dying horrible deaths. So this is a little bit about who she is. So this is the meeting between Sister Mary Frances and jazz. She'll see you now, says the receptionist, down the hall to the left. I refresh my coffee. I'm starting to get the shakes, but I'm enjoying the buzz. I walk down the long hall, Sean Penn in Dead Man Walking. I hope the ex-nun looks like Susan Sarandon. I stop in front of the only open door. The office looks like a bomb has gone off. Scattered papers everywhere, empty cans of Dr. Pepper, half-eaten bags of chips, boxes filled and overflowing with an assortment of this and that. In the center of it all sits an old woman typing. typing on an outdated laptop, a laborious two-fingered peck that has her cursing under her breath. Shoulder-length gray hair, John Lennon granny glasses, a navy blue man's jacket with a white t-shirt underneath. The room is cramped, stuffy. A shot of Mount Fuji, believe in your dreams. Cliches. Oblivious to me, she taps the backspace button, hits it harder, then harder again, now shouting, I didn't ask you to do that. I knock. Excuse me, are you? I frightened her. She starts, jerks her head up. It's worse than I thought. She's really old, at least 90. Her hair is exploded right out of the side of her head like she just stuck her finger in an electric socket. Her glasses are taped on one side and sit crookedly on a face that looks permanently sunburned. Sorry, she says, please come in and take a seat. I'll just be a minute. Hand on the mouse, she clicks it once, twice, closes it down, swivels her chair in my direction. I hate computers. Okay, what can I do for you? Holding out the vain hope that the gravelly voiced woman in front of me is not the ex-nun, but her assistant, I say, I'm here to see the social worker. You're looking at her, she said. Really? You don't look like a, what? She said. A social worker? No, Jazz says, a nun. Very observant of you. I've made it a habit to not wear a habit. She laughs, slaps her thigh. Oh no. One of these people who does stand-up on amateur night at Yuck Yucks. This is not getting off to a good start. She stares at me, raises her eyebrows, waiting for me to laugh, sighs, roots around in the top drawer of her desk, pulls out a packet of Nicorette. It's hell to quit smoking, she says. Take it from me and never start. Now, tell me, why are you here? All right, so we get to know Sister Mary Frances a little bit. And who else do I want to introduce you to? I'm going to introduce you to Kendall at the end. But yes. Okay. Kendall. So Kendall is a transgender therapist that Jazz ends up working with. Kendall. I like playing with the sounds of words. Caroling, cacophony, chorus, kill, crisis, crucify, serendipity, stupor, supernova. The etymology of words fascinates me. Take, for instance, the etymology of the words freak and weird. Freak, 1560s, sudden turn of mind, of unknown origin, perhaps related to the Old English frisian, to dance. Weird, 1400, having power to control fate, from weird, noun, from the Old English weird, W-Y-R-D. Both of these words have often been used as pejorative labels. And yet the etymology of the words tells a different story. They allow for a different personal response, turning a barb into a boon, so to speak. So much so that when, from a state of outright ignorance, another human being calls me one of these names, I affirm loudly, yes, I am indeed weird and a freak, and thank you for your astute observation. Have a wonderful day. I tell this to my clients to make them laugh, but more so, to make them think. The ex-nun from the community center in Riverdale is sending me a young transgendered male with some kind of musical name. I am hoping he does not identify as Christian. They burned too many of us. All right, now I don't want to spoil the story because I really want you to read it. So we're going to skip ahead to the end, and Glenn is going to wrap this up for me. So let's skip forward, honey, to page 100.
Okay.
So this is the last thing that we hear from Jazz. So I am going to give the end away. It is a happier ending. Okay. I'm moving into some transitional housing until I can find something more permanent. Kimmy is teaching me how to cut hair so I can earn extra money. I'll need it. Tea is expensive. And no more reefer madness. I want to be present as my body changes. Jean Paul has disappeared, but I know where he would stand on what I am doing. I hope he is safe. Below me, the ice shifts, cracks, sounds of water flowing. The glowering sky recedes to reveal a startling blue, and the crisp chill turns tail and, like a guilty child, runs away. Before me, a small bridge waits. From a distance, I hear the sound of singing. On the horizon, I see a band of people, some known, some unknown, calling to me with open arms, inviting me into the future that awaits me. Kendall says, if every atom in your body comes from a star that exploded billions of years ago, then perhaps who and what you are is simply a new way for that stardust to align. An evolutionary leap exploding normal into the countless diverse ways that life seeks to express itself. I am life seeking to express itself. I like that.
There is a shadow of a girl floating around me, gossamer, guileless. And though I cannot unlearn or forget what her life in me has taken, what it has given is an inestimable gift. There is a shadow of a boy walking within me. His spirit is lightning fire. He will not be shackled. I give him the lead. His heart thrums in anticipation of his victory. At birth, I was labeled a girl. At the hour of my death, I will be buried as a man. But I am so much more. My name is Jazz. Like the music, I am nature's improvisation.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you. It was a great joy for Glenn and I to share this time and to do this with you. And we wanted to we have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, please send them off in the chat to Jennifer, and she will pose them to us with our old eyes.
You may not be able to see this, Elizabeth and Glenn, but we have lots of people on the call using the emojis, clapping, sharing hearts. Again, if anyone has questions or comments, you can pop them in the chat. I also, throughout the call, noticed that I think this is really important to mention, we have so much support in the room today from public libraries across Ontario. We have our
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Nielsen is here today representing Grey Highlands and really acknowledging that, you know, we are an inclusive community. We have libraries from Collingwood, Brighton, Ramera, Trent Lakes. If I'm missing anyone, I apologize, but thank you so much for your support today. And Elizabeth and Glenn, thank you so much for leading this really important conversation.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer.
While we wait, I don't see anything coming through just yet, but I also want to mention that Elizabeth does have copies of Jazz for sale. So if anyone is interested in purchasing a copy, you could pick them up at the Grey Highlands Public Library or send us an email at contact@greyhighlandspubliclibrary.com, and we'll find a way to get a copy to you. But there is a copy for free in our collection as well. And we do have another one of Elizabeth's books. If you enjoy jazz, you may enjoy some of her other writing as well.
Jennifer, I would like to say something to Elizabeth.
Okay.
Elizabeth, your reading was profound. You are not only are you an incredible writer, you are an incredible actress. Of course, I know that. I just wanted you to know that I just loved listening to your reading. Anyway, okay, here we go.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart.
Mhm.
And thank you, Kaz, for clapping during that. So I love theater and I love acting, and Kaz is also an incredible actor, and so we've shared the stage together. So Kaz understands like what that is for me. So thanks, my love. Thank you. So good to see your face. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we don't have any questions. So shall we move to our closing, or do you think people are being shy?
We do have a comment from Bo Penny. Bo is saying, crying, brilliant book.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Bo. Thank you.
I did have a comment after the video that we screened at the beginning of the presentation from another librarian who said she also was in tears. And Heather is saying, me too. Deputy Mayor Nielsen, am I good to share? Yes. So from our Deputy Mayor, he's sharing a comment that his youngest has said he wants to be a boy from the age of 2 because of past warriors who have had to fight just to be themselves, that my child is being accepted for who he is, and the school is accepting of him as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so common. Like when we have conversations with other trans people, most people remember telling their parents when they were, before they went to school, right? There's just a knowing. And what makes Glenn and I weep sometimes is seeing the progression of things, how in Glenn's time in 1944, there wasn't even a word for that. So then how could a child express that about themselves? And then when children were, saying these things in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, that there was all sorts of attempts to squash the knowing in that kid and to help to reframe them. And then we know all of the terrible things that were done in terms of people. What's the word I'm looking for? What were some of those horrible psychiatric treatments that were done?
Oh, yeah, electroshock.
Electroshock, and there was drugs that were given to try and suppress things. And so now we're always so excited. I remember, Glenn and I have had the experience of many parents coming to us and saying, oh, my son has told us this, or my daughter, and what do we do and how do we do it? And to see parents making their peace with this when the child is 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. so that the child can actually enter into their growing up years without having to deal with that terrible sense of, I have to wear these clothes. I have to, I remember Glenn has a picture of himself. His parents sent him to charm school. You can see Glenn sitting there with the makeup and the hair and just looking at the camera like, you're kidding. I have to do this. Like,
I was looking at the charm. I was looking at the teacher. She was looking delicious. But frankly.
So it's really wonderful to see that progression happening in communities, in families. It makes us so happy. Because we all are part of this incredible human spectrum. And the heteronormative norms that got really, really pushed after the Second World War are so limiting to all of us, to all of our humanity. I mean, I remember thinking as a little girl, how much I hated that as a little girl, I was supposed to be not as smart, not as knowing as I was, and that I was supposed to wear certain clothing, and there was many behaviors that were taken from me, speaking out. And so it's obviously I've reclaimed that. So there you be. Anyway, it's good to know that these transitions are happening. Yeah, so should we move to our closing now, Jennifer?
Yes. So Elizabeth is going to read a final excerpt from her novella.
So the character of Kendall, who ends up as you know, being Jazz's therapist, is also an academic. He has his PhD, and this is from an essay that he has written. So he's sitting in the room with Jazz, and he says, "I brought you a copy of a personal essay I'm writing. You might find it interesting. It introduces the concept that nothing in nature is a mistake. Nothing in nature is a mistake." The waitress comes by with a coffee pot, turns up the cups, pours coffee. Jazz stares out the window. Sister Mary prods him in the arm. "Earth to Jazz, come back. The good doctor has brought something for you." He pours sugar into his coffee, adds cream, takes a sip, picks up the article, and begins to read. A Freak of Nature or an Evolutionary Jump by Kay Johnson, PhD. I've been called a freak of nature, and for years I believed that to be true. A man's brain, a woman's body, how is that not an aberration? But if every atom in my body came from a star that exploded millions, if not billions of years ago, then perhaps who and what I am is simply a new way for that stardust to align and express. Perhaps I am not on the outside looking in, but on the outside looking for new ways for humanity to express itself, to share with the world what I know in my heart to be true. As it is with all living things, I am stardust. And from that place of understanding, what can we not do? And thank you so much, sweetheart, for joining us. Thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate that, Jennifer. And I'd like to thank Jeff, who's been taking care of making sure everybody could get in and all of those things. And I'd like to thank my dear beloved wife. Yum, yum, yum. Thank you, sweetie.
Thank
All right.
you, and happy day of trans visibility.
Yes. Yes. All right. Blessings to you all.